So what was the application process like for getting into Oxford? So I studied my undergraduate degree at the University of Oxford, and the application process was quite different to applying to any other UK university, or at least the experience that my friends had applying to get into other universities. So to start with, I had to do my standard personal statement, and then pretty early on in the October, because you do have a very early application date for Oxford, so your personal statement has to go in sooner, and then pretty much straight away after sending that in, you have to sit some form of entrance exam, and that exam is dependent upon what course you are doing. So for my course, I had to do something called the TSA exam, which is a thinking skills assessment. If you're applying for medicine, for example, you would have a different course. They're all very, very different, and I can do another video about the TSA and what was on that kind of exam, because it wasn't really something you could prep for, but I can talk about that in a separate video if anyone's interested, and if not, then no worries. So that was a TSA, and then following the TSA, those who got the highest marks in the TSA and based off their personal statements would be then offered an interview, and that interview for me took place in December. I think all the interviews take place in December, and you actually don't find out if you've got an interview until around a couple of weeks before. So it's kind of just sitting tight and waiting to hear, and then in the December I got an email to say that I'd been called for interview, and again, that's probably something I should make a separate video on, the interview process and what was that like being interviewed, because it was quite unusual. You had to go and stay down there for 3 days, sometimes more, sometimes less. But yeah, I can do a separate video on that. And then once I had my interview, I went down and stayed in Oxford. They basically put me up in halls for a few days, and I had multiple interviews. And then after that, went home, and then we got told the date we would hear whether or not we had an offer. And for me, I'm pretty confident that was the 7th of January. And I actually told my parents and my family it was the 10th of January because I didn't want to have the pressure of people asking me, so I thought I'd rather find out myself whether I get an offer or not and then tell them afterwards. So yeah, so that's when that was. And then on the 7th of January, I got both an email and a written letter arrived to let me know I had been offered a place based on the conditions that I needed to get an A star and 2 A's in 3 out of my 4 A levels that I was taking at the time. And then it just came down to results day and getting the grades, which I did, and then I obviously had a place. There's loads more I can talk about. Any other questions, please ask about Oxford colleges and all sorts of things about my experience. I'm running out of time, but please let me know if there's anything else you want to know.